Good day, dear students. I hope that you are all doing well in your homes and in the areas where you study. And I am praying that all of us are thriving despite this pandemic. This can test our resilience or our ability to bounce back despite challenges. But then I believe that we will all be successful, especially through the guidance of our Almighty God. So let's start. Welcome to the Department of Psychology, which includes understanding the self as your core courses. So there are a lot of perspectives in understanding ourselves. So there is that we call psychological, philosophical, sociological, anthropological, and we also have views regarding the Western and Eastern beliefs. So for now, let's start with the philosophical perspective of the self. Have you already started reading philosophical perspective of the self through the hard or e-copy of your workbooks and your modules? Who among the philosophers do you admire the most and why? Don't worry if you have not yet started, so I hope that through this presentation you will be guided in doing your activities in the workbook. After the presentation, you are expected to create your own philosophy in life, discuss the different perspectives of the self through philosophy, and of course summarize the philosophical dictums of the self based on the various philosophers. So what is philosophy, by the way? It says here that it is from Greek words philos, which means love, and sophia, which means wisdom. Therefore, philosophy is love of wisdom. It is the study of the general and fundamental problems concerning matters like existence, values, knowledge, mind, and language. It is under philosophy that we could learn ethics and logic. Okay? So here are the various people who have contributed essential ideas regarding understanding the self. First is Socrates. He is known as the father of Western philosophy. His dictum is know thyself. And of course, he is from Greece. He said that man is subdivided into body and soul. So you have a body, you also have a soul, according to Socrates. And of course, the proper way to solve problems is to discover our true nature through knowing ourselves. Man is a being who wills and thinks, and knowledge is a virtue while ignorance is a vice. When we say knowledge is a virtue, when we say virtue, it is the consistent conformity or obedience to what is true. So when we are consistent in finding for reliable sources of information that we do not know yet, then proper knowledge comes in. While ignorance is a vice, we know that vices are the negative deeds or actions that we do that ruin our normal functions. So if ignorance is one of the vices, then ayan, kawawa naman po ang taong ganito. But remember, the admission of ignorance is the beginning of the wisdom. So the point that we can also accept and acknowledge that we lack information or knowledge about something, then that's already the commencement of us being curious, inquisitive, and of course we search and discover for answers regarding the things that we do not know. So once we acknowledge and do that or manifest that, then wisdom comes in through the discoveries, the potentials that we already know about ourselves. Remember, the unexamined life is not worth living, according to Socrates. Just think of it. Have you examined your lives during your elementary years, your high school? And through those life examination that you have had, did the results influence you on what course to take in college? So I hope that now that you are already in college, do not cease or stop to examine or evaluate your lives so that you'll be able to transform truly according to what you need and what you really want. And according to him, knowledge is the personification of good while ignorance of that evil. Okay, I have explained that a while ago, the continuum of knowledge and ignorance. Self-knowledge is the ultimate virtue, so do not stop learning. because learning must be a continuous process, regardless of what role we undertake, regardless of where we will go. The second one is Plato. He is the student of Socrates, and he is also from Greece. And of course, his dictum relies on the ideal self and the perfect self. He is a dualist because he sees man as composed of body, or the material one, and soul, which pertains to the immaterial. Soul exists before birth and after death, according to him. And the soul is composed of reason, physical appetite, spirit, or passion. So if we will go to the psychological perspective, we could also compare this as reason as parallel to ego, physical appetite as parallel to id, and the spirit as parallel to superego. And according to him as well, man should live a life of virtue in which true human perfection exists. There is a famous adage that no man is perfect. Okay, but then according to Plato, if we live a life of virtue, then true human perfection exists. And as I've said a while ago, virtue is the consistent conformity on finding the truth and living the truth. An example of which is moral virtue, which is rooted in the intellect and leads to happiness. Okay, let's proceed to the third one. Saint Augustine of Hippo. His dictum relies on love and justice as the foundation of the individual self. He said that the development of the self is achieved through self-presentation and self-realization. When we say self-presentation, it could be through the autobiography that you have written. It could be through digital platforms like the social media, the Facebook, or it could be through the actual personal presentation on how you interact with others. And the self-realization that he says here is the moment when we evaluate the pros and cons on how we presented ourselves through those different means. According to him as well, man is a perfect unity of the body and the soul. So the material body belongs to the physical world, while the soul can know God. And according to him, the most important slide I have seen in St. Augustine's ideas, man's end goal is happiness. Do you agree? What is your own end? What is your own goal as a man? Ponder on that. Only in God can man attain true and eternal happiness, made possible in his contemplation of the truth and the divine wisdom. St. Augustine says that if we recognize that a transcendent being, such as God, who becomes the reason of everything that we do, then we'll find happiness. And that is the end goal of man, according to St. Augustine. Are you amenable to that? And of course, he said that human beings alone without God are bound to fail. Do you also agree? I myself agree on this premise. Why? Because I've had a lot of experiences which could influence me in believing this. An example of which is that when I have gone surgical operations for several times, and I considered my life now as my second, my third, because I am still breathing, and I attest it to God's grace. Love of God, faith in Him, and the understanding of His gospel will ultimately lead to happiness. Remember that gospel means good news. That's why we start dwelling on what Jesus has done at the cross as a sacrifice and as a gift as well to all of us, for us to enjoy our lives right now. So let's proceed to Rene Descartes. He said that cogito ergo sum, or I think therefore I am. He is considered as the father of modern philosophy, and he is from France. He said that the self is a thinking entity distinct from the body. Are you amenable to this? That you are separate from your body. Your mind is separate from your body. Rene Descartes focused on the function of the mind and our thinking abilities to investigate, analyze, experiment, and develop ourselves. He said that we cannot really rely on our senses because our sense perceptions can often deceive us. An example of which is that two neighbors, neighbor A always notices and comments to the laundry of the neighbor B na sinasabi niyang, bakit laging madumi ang labahin ng aking neighbor? Hindi ba siya gumagamit ng detergent? Hindi ba siya gumagamit ng washing machine? Kaya laging ganon? Then only to find out that the window pane, the window glasses of neighbor A were not cleaned, therefore very blurry siya. At yun ang nakakontribute para doon sa conclusion niya na maduming maglaba ang neighbor B. Okay? So kung nalinisan kaya iyon, same with the glasses. Kung accurate yung measurement ng lens, yung grade, at dun sa window pane, kung malinis lang siya, therefore, hindi yun makakakontribute dun sa wrong perception ng isang tao. Therefore, as persons, we should also be vigilant on what things around us could affect our perceptions. Okay? Only after the certitude of the doubting eye can all the other existences become certain. So, yes, if we dwell with the negative phrase, doubting eye, we continuously doubt, it could also be a positive one. Why? Because when we doubt, we ask. When we doubt, we search. When we doubt, we discover for the reliable truth. And according to him as well, the mind and the soul can exist without the body. Establishing the distinction of the soul from the body can make people believe in the afterlife and the soul's immortality. Are you also amenable to this, or is it applicable to you? Some would say that the body and the mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit are one, but according to him, our body is separate from our soul. We all have our contentions, but then this is the contention of René Descartes. So let's just take this as our guide. Let's proceed to the next philosopher, John Locke. He is considered as the father of liberalism, and his contribution is the theory of personal identity. And by the way, he is from United Kingdom. According to himself, is comparable to an empty space where everyday experiences contribute to the pile of the knowledge that is put forth on that empty space. That empty space is the tabula rasa, or the blank slate. So, it is likened to a sponge na hindi pa gamit. Then, habang ginagamit, dun siya nag-absorb ng water. Okay, just like an infant. John Locke considers an infant as a blank slate, that through experiences, personal experiences, dun lang mamumold yung bata. Are you amenable to this? Pero sinasabi ng psychology ay nurture versus nature. Or, hindi siya dapat versus. It is the interaction of nature and nurture that a person is molded. And according to him, our concept of personal identity must be derived from our inner experiences. It is the experience that creates personal identity. Siya nga naman. Okay, we all say that experience is the best teacher, and it is parallel to John Locke's idea that experience creates personal identity. But then, yes, we may learn from our experiences, but we should also be selective on what to experience. Okay? Let's proceed to the next one, David Hume from United Kingdom. He is the Scottish philosopher who contributed the idea that the self is a bundle theory of mind. So let's discover what is that bundle theory of mind. Sabi niya, all knowledge is derived from the senses. The impressions that we create are more superior than our ideas because ideas come from impressions. We all have that first impression, or the initial perception that we have to a certain place, to a certain person, but then from those impressions that we create accurate ideas. Sinasabi ni David Hume na mas mahalaga yung impression kaysa sa mga ideas. Okay? Dahil ito yung nagiging basihan ng ideas natin. According to him, all we know about ourselves are just bundles or collections of different temporary impressions. So do you agree to this? And according to him, there is no self, only a bundle of perceptions. So for example, my impression about myself, okay, that For example, I am a negative thinker that I am not beautiful, I am not brilliant, I am sickly, and the like. Those bundle of perceptions compose myself. Okay? Walang separate whole na self, pero merong bundle of perceptions na na-form sa self. Yan sabi ni David Hume. And according to Emmanuel Kant, a German philosopher who contributed the idea for the respect for self. Sinasabi niya na man is the only creature who governs and directs himself and his actions, who sets up ends for himself and his purpose, and who freely orders means for the attainment of his aim. If man is a rational being, then according to Emmanuel Kant, dapat daw magiging congruent yung means papunta dun sa end goal natin. Okay? So, yung ginagawa sana natin ngayon, according siya doon, ina-anchor natin siya sa end goal na sinet natin. So, sabi niya din, tao lang ang pwedeng gumawa nito. Hindi pwedeng gawin ng hayop, hindi pwedeng gawin ng aso, and the like. So, we have our thinking ability, indeed. And according to him, everyone is thus an end in himself and should never be treated as means. A plain dictum of reason and justice. Respect others as you would respect yourself. Well, this is a very practical dictum. Respect others as you would respect for yourself. A good example of which is if you are watching the movie teaser of Love or Money, the recent movie of Coco Martin and Angelica Panganiban, wherein Coco Martin is in love with Angelica, so thus Angelica to Coco, but then Angelica selects the rich person because the rich person is considered as a means for Angelica to get rich. So, yung ginagawa ni Angelica na kinoconsider niya yung tao na mayaman para yumaman din siya is a no-no for Emmanuel Kant. So, respect others as you would respect for yourself. Okay? And according to him, all men are persons gifted with the same basic rights and should treat each other as equals. I love this premise. Why? Because regardless of socio-economic status, regardless of gender, regardless of sex, regardless of position, academic rank, or kahit ano pa man yan na pamantayan sa buhay, we should treat each other as equal. So, I think this dictum, this premise, is a reason for us to be humble regardless of what we reach in life. Let's proceed to Gilbert Ryle, the British philosopher, who said that I act, therefore I am. Kung sinabi ni Rene Descartes na cogito ergo sum, or I think therefore I am, kabalik na naman po ito sa sinasabi ni Gilbert Ryle because you are what you do. I act, therefore I am. The mind is never separate from the body. Dualism is a category of mistake. Yung dualism kasi from Plato says that a man is composed of a body and the soul, tapos medyo sineseparate niya yung soul. Pero pupunta tayo sa Gilbert Ryle, sabi niya magkasama ang mind at ang body. Okay? So if we compare that to psychology, yes, the mind is a powerful tool for us to be behaving in the way we do. Physical actions or behaviors are dispositions of the self which are derived from our private inner experiences. Yes. Do you agree with this? Because I agree with this. Okay, that the inner experiences that we have affect the observable behavior that other persons could see. And according to Paul Churchland, who is a philosopher from Canada, the self is the brain. He promoted the position they called eliminative materialism, which brings forth neuroscience in the fore of understanding the self. So, nagkakaroon na tayo dito ng impluensya ng science, especially the neuroscience, as the Churchlands wanted to predict. When people wanted to ask what is going on with themselves, they might as well go for MRI or CT scan to understand the present condition of the brain and how it currently works. Okay, so Para kay Churchland, hindi lang ginagamit ang MRI or CT scan para sa mga na-stroke or para sa may mga problem. Pwede din tong gamitin, okay, para malaman kung paano nag-work ang ating brain. A fully matured neuroscience will eliminate the need for beliefs since they are not real. The physical brain gives us a sense of self, he says. And punta naman tayo kay Maurice Merleau-Ponty, a French phenomenological philosopher, and he contributed the phenomenology of perception. According to him,